Happy Friday, good morning, welcome to Morning at NTV. My name is Malaki Vilodera. Now today on the solution segment, actually Kickstarter segment, I got you right there. We'll be talking about torture. Of course, in the past few days, we've been seeing this and the recent cases of Mr. Yusuf Kawoya. And so what does this mean and what exactly are some of the organizations that are in charge of, dealing with such issues doing with regards to this? And so in studios, I'm joined by Mr. Samuel Herbert Nsubuga, who is the CEO of the African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims, ACT. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you, Mala.
Let's start with you telling us the mandate of ACT.
The African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims is mandated to treat and rehabilitate survivors of torture. Not only Ugandans, but also refugees. And we have a diverse human resource to deal with both the physical and psychological effects of torture. We have doctors, clinical psychologists, physiotherapists, nurses, social workers, and we even have legal officers because we link up the survivors of torture after we have treated them to various institutions so that they get legal redress.
Okay. So it's just pretty much rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation and treatment, but also advocacy, because at the end of the day, prevention, as they say, is better than cure.
Right.
So we do a lot of advocacy where we create awareness with both security agencies and communities to know things about torture. We also, since we passed the anti-torture law was passed in 2012, over the years we have been creating awareness about this anti-torture law so that it's utilized so that mitigate torture occurrences in our country.
Okay, so the most recent cases of Mr. Yusuf Kawoya, and that of course we saw happen on the 18th of October.
Yes.
Did ACT do something with that regard, be it rehabilitation, be it just now that you do advocacy,
Yes.
did you also front your concerns?
What we do, we actually have a program, a mainstreamed program where we create awareness, we do trainings for all the security agencies. So what the way forward is now to try to identify those particular units, that is units who did that, to train them, that to inform them that you do not need to brutalize somebody while arresting a suspect. You can immobilize somebody without having to go through all that, because at the end of the day, maybe giving the benefit of doubt, maybe they are not trained to arrest in a proper way. So that at the end of the, because what the Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act is that these people are individually liable for their acts. So those gentlemen who did that may not have been aware that there is a law which would hit them hard and they serve time in prison. So we have a program of training these security agencies so that they are aware of this law, they are aware that perpetrating torture, they are individually liable for their actions.
So do you train after they torture people and victims, or train before it actually happens?
No, we have actually a training program. Just actually last month in September, we did a training with a group of the Air Force based in Entebbe. We did a training of the UPDF in Kasese. We are planning to do a training of police officers at their training institute in Bwebaja. So we have this in our work plans every year. So maybe now what we need to do to be more specific is to kind of identify those particular units of these particular agencies, maybe from the SIU and of course particular units from CMI, to see that they are also so they are trained, so that at least at the end of the day, even after the training, there will be no excuse for these acts which are going on.
So pretty much what you're saying is once these people are actually found guilty of torture, of course the security operatives, then you only move, you can't move to actually advocate for them to be punished. You just stand aside and say, okay, our mandate is just training. In terms of advocacy, how far do you get?
Now we work with other organizations because at the end of the day, first of all, the investigations when some of these occurrences come are really vested in the investigative agencies like the CID and police. We at the end of the day, you would like these institutions to investigate and go through the courts of law so that these people are punished. We also work with the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions because would like these people who perpetrate torture to be charged with the Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act so that they get the deserved punishment rather than disciplinary punishment, which may not be a deterrent at the end of the day. Yes.
Okay, all right. So in terms of rehabilitation, of course, after the Arua chaos that we saw,
yes,
the person who was most affected is Honorable Francis Zake, and
yes,
he just came back to the country after receiving treatment.
Yes.
Have you tried to approach him to work on him, because it seems he needs that so much in terms of rehabilitation and just, you know, getting him back on track psychologically?
Actually, we are putting in plan to approach all the Arua 33, not only the members of parliament. We are trying to put together an outreach program, trying to plan for one. Because as our organization has 2 centers, one in Kampala and one in Gulu, but we have an extensive outreach program where we go to different regions of the country. Unfortunately, the West Nile region has not been part of our focus, but now, because this has come up, we are trying to put together a plan to go and actually see not only the MPs but also the other 32, the other 30. I mean the Arua, yeah, 33. Yes,
Arua 33.
We have actually already examined 16 in total. Mm-hmm. Our team in Gulu examined 8. If you recall, when this Arua fracas happened, they were transferred to Gulu. Mm-hmm. So we alerted our team in Gulu to go and examine them, and then also there were another 8 who have been being treated in Kampala. So we have examined. So in total, so far we have seen 16 of them. But we would really like to see the other 17 and also other people who may not have known. So we want to go. We are trying to set up a program to go to the West Nile region. Yes.
Are all these services free of charge?
Yes, at no cost. Most of the people who undergo torture are actually economically disadvantaged. They do not have even the resources to come to our centers for treatment. That's why I said that we have an extensive outreach program. We go to them, so we make it at least more convenient to them by not having them at no cost to the client. Yes.
Okay, you've actually mentioned that you go a step further and train, security operatives,
yes,
and the military at that.
Yes.
So, with all the training that you've done,
yes,
and out of the torture issues and
yes,
cases that you've seen this year,
yes,
of course this year the issues and the cases have
yes,
been
yes,
on the rise.
Yes.
So have any of the officials that you've trained been found in these particular scenarios where they've actually inflicted torture upon victims?
Not to our knowledge, no. That is why we are, okay, of course we are extremely disappointed because over the years, even before the law was passed, we have had these sensitizations, we have been creating awareness. Torture is a crime, it's a non-derogable right. It's freedom from torture is a non-derogable right. At all times, no one should be tortured. So we more or less thought we had done enough to sensitize everybody and sundry, being even saying that people are individually liable, but the happenings of this year really were quite disappointing. But we haven't yet at least identified anyone who we trained who was tortured. No.
During all these incidences, of course, the police, the UPDF, and all these, security operatives and the agencies have come out to say that it's not the entire agency that is at fault. It's just the individuals. And so far, we haven't seen anything tangible being done to these individuals. So by and large, just educate us, what should be the ideal punishment for such officers who perpetrate torture against victims? Actually,
they serve 15 years if they are convicted, 15 years in prison, and those who send the order serve 7 years in prison. But maybe what I would like to pledge though is that we would like more. Would like to see these punishments being made. Would like to have these people perpetrating torture prosecuted and convicted, because as we speak now, we do not have any conviction of an officer.
Right.
And if an officer is convicted and we see that he has gone to Luzira or Chigo for 15 years, it will serve as an example to the rest that, this law bites, that torture is a no-no. But that is where we still feel that the institutions which are investigating, the institutions which should go through this whole chain of justice are not doing enough, because you can see the cry of everyone, the cry of the public. They are not seeing any headway in having these perpetrators of torture punished. At least if the institutions concerned can at least effectively implement the Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act, so that it bites, so that there are examples people see, we believe it will be the deterrent to these despicable acts we have been seeing of late.
Let me ask you, you've said part of your work is also in advocacy, and you actually interface with some of these people that actually push for the punishment of such perpetrators. But what exactly comes on? Because we always see in the papers, in the news, this issue is being investigated, this police officer is being investigated. What comes in between? What makes these investigations actually take so long and drag to the point whereby even the public forgets and these people are not brought to book, so
Your
to
guess
speak?
is as good as mine. We get agitated, we get frustrated because when they keep telling you investigations are going on, we tend to feel that no, they are not doing enough to make sure that these people are punished. And we keep advocating for increased resources towards the investigative agencies, the CID.
Is it a matter of resources?
At least to because at the end of the day, the human resource need to be trained to solve crimes without having to resort to torture. Having a forensic laboratory up to date, using the fingerprint data bank. I hope the police have utilized with a national ID, because I'm sure everyone's fingerprints are with the Ministry of Internal Affairs. So would like to see some sort of use of forensic science to solve these crimes, rather than brutalizing people by saying that they're trying to solve crimes. We would like to see more of that, and that means increased resources towards that area.
Your major role is to rehabilitate these torture victims. And one would ask, because we just see the stories, but we never know how serious this issue is. When you deal with them real time, how are their families affected, and how are they affected as individuals, especially with their close families? And I'll bring case and study, especially the Arua 33. Most of them were breadwinners, and I'm sure you interact with their families as well. How bad is torture? Just for us to understand the magnitude of this issue.
It's good you have brought it up, because we usually look at just the primary clients who have been inflicted on torture. But the secondary clients are actually the families, the breadwinners, and because if one is a breadwinner, then that means the family, there is a family breakup. There has been family breakdowns where the spouse of one who was tortured just decides to leave. That means that there's no education for the children. So in that regard, we have a lot of partners we refer to deal especially with that livelihood aspect. As ACTV, even though it's part of our strategic objectives, unfortunately we have not yet got resources in that direction. Mm-hmm. So we deal with other organizations to provide that livelihood aspect of trying to train, having vocational skills imparted on a person when he or she has completed the treatment, so that they can become productive enough, so that they can earn some income, and then their children can go back to school. Yes.
Wow, wow. And in terms of them just getting back on track, how long does it take, especially for them that have not just been tortured physically, because in terms of the physique, then the medical doctors can deal with it. Yes. But psychologically, how long does it take for a torture victim to actually get back on track and to recover?
The psychological one is one which people actually do not know, that is extremely serious, because imagine, even up to now, our center in Gulu receives survivors of the war, because they are still psychologically traumatized of the war. And when did the war end? 2006-07.
Right.
So that is 12 years down the road. So the psychological one is what we do. We have a program where at least 10 sessions by our mental health team engage with the client for at least 10 sessions, and these sessions can be even 1 hour, they can be 3 hours. So that means that now that is a period of 10 sessions. It can be a period of like 2 months, mm-hmm. Because it's a session a week, and then after that, then we try to see whether we gauge whether they still need more sessions. So the psychological bit is extremely serious, because even the perpetrators of torture, actually, you can see somebody whole, you are whole like that, but when inside you are broken, because they have used methods which actually physically you are seen as intact, but psychologically you are broken. So that is extremely serious.
Are the perpetrators affected psychologically?
I would think so. I would think so, because let me give you an example.
Yes.
Us as ACTV, mm-hmm. every twice a year we go out to kind of let off steam, because the stories we hear, the clients we see, I mean, these things we see them on a daily. So I mean, we are also affected by what we see, the stories we hear. So I believe even those people who perpetrate torture, at the end of the day, are affected, unless they are high on something, but they are definitely affected. So the issue of torture is quite traumatic. Yes.
Wow. Let's get to the issue of how these torture victims are handled.
Yes.
And case in study, and this is what we saw, Mr. Francis Zake, Honorable.
Yes.
And even the public was concerned
on
how the government actually handled him.
Yes.
And even when he was coming back from, abroad from treatment, how he was whisked away from the airport to his home. We saw him clearly come on media and say that I even got back to getting my pains and the pains that I used to have because they mishandled me.
Yes.
Do we have laws that protect torture victims against mishandling, either by individuals or government?
All those people who did all these things are actually supposed to be disciplined, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's a human rights violation, even the way you handle it. And even in this act, we do not have only torture. We all have what they call cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment, which also has its punishment. So that was a degrading way in which they were handling the Member of Parliament. So as I mentioned earlier, we would like to see more the government punishing these people. And in any case, Honorable Zake had come to whatever, there was nowhere he was going. So why don't you handle him well, and he goes back, goes to his home in peace. So at the end of the day, really, we need to have a change in the way people are handled, so that torture is completely eliminated.
What should we be expecting from ACTV in the coming days with regards to fighting this vice?
In addition to continuing our program of training security agencies, we will, as I said, we are planning to see how best we can intervene with Arua 33, and we also, I hope the agencies can hear. I would like you to help us to identify those people who have not been trained, so that they are trained, so that they are aware of the anti-torture law, so that they know how to arrest without dehumanizing a person, and basically to also know, to be aware that perpetrating torture is a crime, and that they will be individually liable for their actions. So that is really the way forward, to continue the dissemination of that information to everybody. And remember, we do not only train the security agencies, we also train the communities, because there are issues of where the security agency is saying that this person is resisting arrest. We would also like the communities to know that, that if you are a suspect, do not resist arrest, because at the end of the day, I mean, you may meet a security officer who does not know about human rights, and you suffer when actually you wouldn't have suffered. So we also go to the communities and talk about these issues, so that at the end of the day it's balanced. You don't want a situation where the security agency says that we are not targeting the communities, but we also do that on a regular basis.
There's a big question that I'm getting from social media, and what people are asking is, how come these security operatives have to go through training to understand how to handle victims? And they're supposed to be trained before they even get these jobs? Does it now point to a bigger problem that these people are actually recruited when half-baked in terms of training? That's
an excellent question. Actually, all the security agencies have human rights directorates. They are training. Internally, they have training in human rights. So they are actually supposed to be aware about these issues. Around 2 years ago, we created awareness to about 1,000 just passed out recruits in Kabalye. They are supposed to know. That question is extremely valid. That's why I still insist on the issue of isolating these people and punishing them, and we see that they are being punished, punished for their sins, because at the end of the day, they should be aware that they are not supposed to do that. If they are not punished, then you start thinking, is this issue, is it institutionalized?
And actually creates a culture of impunity, whereby such things are actually acceptable.
Yes. Is it institutionalized? So people start doubting, are the security agencies institutionalizing these acts of torture? So we really need to see examples of these perpetrators of torture punished and serving time in prison. Really, that's when I think the public will know that at least there's something being done about torture.
Thank you so much, Mr. Samuel Herbert Nsubuga, the CEO of the Africa Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims here in the country. Thank you so much.
Thank you, too.
That has been it for Kickstarter. Keep your views coming. The hashtag is Morning at NTV. You can also stream us live and drop in your comments. NTV Uganda, that's on Facebook and YouTube pages. Morning at NTV still continues. Up next is Andrew Chamagero with Reality on the Ground. Keep it here.